Having visited more U.S. Catholic parishes in the last 10 years than any other human being in the entire universe, I can only say that I have met a lot of very fine, committed, extraordinary people who pray, worship, and work in parish environments that are, more often than not, disinterested in their work of social ministry. And what I mean, and I am using broad brushstrokes here based upon my travels, there are certainly exceptions, is that, for example, many pastors, I would even say a significant majority, are not very engaged in social mission. Many religious educators and liturgists are commonly and disturbingly disinterested in social mission. And then, of course, budgets, bulletins, staffing, or the lack thereof, and mission statements resoundingly demonstrate disinterest or a lack of enthusiasm. Mary Wright, on our staff, has co-written a book on the federal budget as a moral document. A book similarly focused should be written about church budgets. In summary, it's my experience that many Catholics who come to a passion for justice and social mission often do so not because of their parish, but in spite of it. They're often introduced to social mission because of a relationship with Catholic Relief Services, or St. Vincent de Paul, or Pax Christi, or Jesuit Volunteer Corps, a Catholic worker, and then discover later, and to their surprise and distress, that they have been birthed to a conviction that their parish does not adequately support. That is, Catholics who are inspired to sacrifice on behalf of the poor and vulnerable often find themselves in their parish unsupported and even eyed suspiciously. How many more times do I have to hear the story from some young woman or some young man who has just returned from a year or two with Jesuit Volunteer Corps, working with the poor, talk about how their local parish now is not interested in anything they have to share, and how alone and abandoned they feel by their own tradition. My second point, which is really the heart of my presentation this morning, is to suggest that the solution to the disconnect between parish and the work of compassion and justice does not lie in more documents, or more encyclicals, or more campaigns, or more programs, even just faith programs, as shocking as that might be to my staff. The obstacle, to put it succinctly, is that the assumptions of the place where most Catholics gather to celebrate and express formally their Catholicism, that is the parish, is currently organized in a way that is inimical or opposed to a robust engagement in social mission. It is my conviction that the current set of assumptions about what constitutes membership in the local parish will forever work against any sincere effort to engage a majority of Catholics in their church's mission. So, as I read the Gospels, there is this alternating pattern in Jesus' ministry that I think provides a template for our lives, for our work, for our faith, and for our parishes. The narrative of the Gospels follows a pattern that gets repeated over and over again, and we take it for granted because I think, in fact, the Gospels take it for granted. It's the drama of gathering and sending. Gathering and sending. Jesus, a teacher, sometimes called rabbi, does what teachers and rabbis do. He gathers disciples, he forms them, he trains them, he challenges them, he enlightens them, and then he sends them. Jesus, the teacher with a particular and life-changing message of God's good news for the world, gathers listeners, and then he sends them. And then Jesus' disciples, then, after Jesus has been crucified and raised from the dead, like their master, their role model, their Messiah, also gather listeners and believers, and then the disciples send them. And so, at its very best, church throughout history has mimicked and embodied this alternation of gathering and sending, and then gathering again and sending. The church gathers, the church sends. So let me define my terms. Gathering in the 21st century church is the work of religious education, Bible studies, catechesis, seminary, spiritual formation. Gathering is the work of liturgy or worship, that is the gathering of the people of faith in prayer. It's the stuff of retreats and convenings like this one, gathering people from all over the country. Gathering is the nurture, the preparation, the celebration, the education, the discernment. Most of the time, gathering happens geographically, as you would guess, at the home base, the mothership, called the parish. Gathering happens at the parish. At its best, gathering speaks to the sense of getting ready. Perhaps getting ready for some particular event like baptism or final vows, but more generally, getting ready for the larger event called the work and commitments of our faith, the work and commitments of our lives. Gathering is what happens on Sunday liturgy or celebrations like marriages and ordinations and confirmations. Gathering is the many social occasions to be together, fish fries, potlucks, and parish festivals. We gather to have fun and be refreshed by the pleasure of each other's company. Gathering is the Lenten retreat or the Advent mission or the revival. Gathering is the RCIA. It's Renew. It's marriage prep. It's about nourishing faith, nourishing the community, about remembering our story, sharing in Eucharist, and being prepared for the second half of the drama called sending. Sending is about mission. Sending includes helping resettle refugees in our hometowns, serving meals at a soup kitchen. It's advocating for immigrants, the poor, the vulnerable. It's providing a safe place for battered women. It's providing care for battered soldiers. It's caring for the hurricane battered in Haiti or the tsunami battered in Japan. The work of agape, by definition, is that the love we're called to knows no exceptions and finds its way to the wounded places. Sending is Jesuit Volunteer Corps and St. Vincent de Paul home visits. It's the work of community organizing and peacemaking. It's about making a place in our homes for women with difficult pregnancies. It's the work outlined and given a vocabulary by Catholic social teaching. The proclamation of the reign of God is to invite a mission statement for our lives. To quote Dorothy Day's challenging words, we love God only as much as we love the person we love the least. And the touchstones of Catholic social teaching include the common good, the dignity of every human life, the dignity of creation. It speaks to support of families, good jobs, attention especially to the poor and vulnerable, and a bias against violence of all kinds, including abortion and capital punishment and war. The proclamation of the reign of God is to embrace the gift of life and the gift of creation that God has given, and to relish it, and to share it, and to protect it. And the critical religious insight drawn from Matthew 25, and read, by the way, on the celebration of Christ the King, the last and crescendo reading in the church year, is that this sending is a necessary part, I would say a constitutive part of what it means to be in relationship to God. Whenever we tend to the poor, the hungry, and the naked, we tend to Jesus. To know compassion for God's Anawim is to know God. No compassion, no knowledge of God, fake faith. You see, the drama, the gospel is this drama of gathering and sending, gathering and sending. It cannot be one or the other. It is necessarily and unavoidably both. And here's the problem. Here's the problem. Now, every talk has some major climax, and since apparently the angels are not going to sing in anticipation of my next sentence, I'm just wanting to tell you it's coming. And here's the problem. Parishes, as they are currently and routinely configured, are primarily or sometimes even exclusively places of gathering, period. If you look at the parish bulletin, the parish budget, the parish staff, the pastor's time, it's all about gathering. It's all about gathering. It's about gathering for Eucharist, gathering for prayer, gathering for education, gathering for fun, gathering for sacramental preparation, which amounts to gathering and preparation for more gathering. And one telltale indicator of this is the fact that the most repeated Catholic question is, what time is Mass? What time are we gathering? And so often the parish calendar is just one big list of gatherings. Now let me be clear. Let me be very clear. I am not bashing gathering. I've dedicated my life to it. I'm a teacher, for goodness sakes. The only thing better than gathering with 25 people is gathering with 25,000 people. I'm so excited I'm also almost hyperventilating. And gathering, as we all know, is critical. Gathering as the nurture of faith is essential. The human hunger for God, for meaning, for faith and understanding, the appetite for vision and spirituality, the desire for encounter with the sacred and the holy are all real and absolutely precious. We need a faith community, so we gather. We need to learn and be formed in the likeness of Christ, so we gather. We need to be mentored to holiness, so we gather. We need to pray and learn how to pray, so we gather. We need to break bread and share a cup, body and blood, so we gather. But gathering, disconnected from sending, ultimately mutates into something less than the gospel and something less than what is so very compelling about Jesus and the church he inspired. That parishes are structured for gathering and not structured for sending has at least two serious consequences, it seems to me.